Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of In the Lounge here with the trio of excellence from Hoops Lounge, Justin Rowan, Marc Griffin, Phil Boileau. We're talking basketball as we always do because we're kind of crazy that way. So we kind of took a hiatus last week, and these two did an awesome job filling in for my ghostness. But now we're back, and my madness of basketball will return. There's been a lot going on. Now I'm trying now. I don't want to always start with this wrecking train that is Kristaps, but it just he kind of makes me happy. I'm not gonna lie. I just watch him and he's just like, I'm gonna say this in a weird light. I haven't liked the Knicks for a long time. I'm still not the biggest Melo fan, but I kind of like them. I like Kristaps. I like Robin Lopez, and the Knicks are making me happy, and the East are good.
You're
Well,
down with the Tingus Pingus, eh?
I'm not sure which nickname I'm sticking with. Like I've heard Zinger, Chris, all these, and it's bouncing around. But he's quietly becoming the darling of the NBA. As soft as that sounds, it's just
I
everyone kind of likes him.
I think I know which nickname you're going to like the best, and it's 3-6 Latvia.
Did you see that rap video with him that I posted on Hoop Lounge?
Yeah, that was pretty outstanding.
Stop.
He's got the personality, like he's got the New York personality to go with a
He
lot
wanted
of
to
things.
go there. He wanted the pressure. He wanted the Big Apple, and he just screams. He's so intense. He's kind of like the Latvian KG. Oh, is that his new name?
No, that's mouthy. That's a mouthful. Anyways, yeah, he's an impressive player. I think he's someone that's going to fit with what they want to do really well. I thought all the pieces that they brought in made a lot of sense. Like Aaron Aflalo is a really good two guard to have, at least when he's playing well. Robin Lopez, good defensive center that's going to make up for a lot of their deficiencies last year. Um, Even the guys like Kevin Seraphin and that, they all made sense. But Porzingis just brings them to that other level where you're like, okay, this could be a legitimate playoff team. So, I mean, if you're a Knicks fan, you got to be ecstatic about where he's at so far. As good as Karl Anthony Towns has been, Porzingis with this winning might have a pretty good case for Rookie of the Year at this point.
Yeah, no, he's got a case of Rookie of the Year, but Mark, look, we've been doing this for a while, and I've never been a Melo guy, and we see Porzingis and Melo in that front court together. Do you think they mesh? Like, is this a future? Because, people are jumping on this bandwagon and, saying they're not going to trade Melo. I oddly think they're actually a really good fit because I think Porzingis does everything that Melo doesn't and the other way around. Like if you're the Knicks, do you love how this looks, especially considering the length of Melo's contract? Or are you liking Zinger or whatever we want to call him so much that would you ever consider trading Carmelo Anthony?
well, I mean, look, I grew up in upstate New York. We've been
Oh, you're a Syracuse guy. I remember that.
bottom dwellers for a long, long, long time. I mean, I glory back to the days of John Starks, Mason, and Ewing, and it's been a long, long time coming. So for me, I'm just cautiously optimistic. I mean, I love the Vines. I love what Zingas is doing. Melo, he's had his issues with his knee last year. Remember that. So I'm happy for the young buck there, but I can't see this being a long-term partnership. Let's just put it that way. I think Melo will eventually depart in some capacity from the team, and Zingas will take over. May take a year or two, but I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. I hope they do, especially for the fans. The fans desperately need to have some good guys in New York.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? But you know what? If there's one position I don't supremely love, and maybe I've never been the biggest fan of the guy, and of course my internal trade clock is going with another guy who's not doing so well in his position. Well, I guess this guy, Jose Calderon. Listen,
Yeah.
he can shoot, he can play make, but I always worry about when he can't play defense. Justin, I know you like trades, man. When we're looking at Houston, again, I'm going to bring up Ty Lawson.
Oh, he's
Would
been horrible. Oh,
would you
Yeah,
think?
and he certainly doesn't solve the defense.
no.
I know where you're going with this, but Ty Lawson doesn't help the defense. You got someone that's 5'10" maybe on a good day, easy to shoot over, and a guy with character concerns. I mean, he's had his issues with drinking and things like that, and you're going to put him in the Big Apple. I just don't see that as an ideal fit. personally at least.
And Strukes' up and down style may not. It may work with Porzingis, but I don't think it's going to work with iso ball with Melo. But
Guys,
I don't know.
Raymond Felton blocked his shot last night just standing on his tippy toes. I mean, Lawson has lost his way completely. I don't see him going to New York at all.
Well, speaking of teams that have lost their way, I mean, like Houston is just this mess, right? And speaking of like kind of a mess, like when did the East start getting good? I mean, the obvious answer is this year, but they've been surprisingly good, and there's been a lot of really surprising teams. And I mean, if you look on all the sites, there was an article that I've been talking about with Justin here. One of these guys, Paul George in Indiana, will just go that like that's just one example of a team that is well exceeded expectations, we'll say.
Yep.
What are your guys' thoughts on the East and what's caused this turnaround?
Well, I mean, the East has been drafting high for a while, and there was a lot of teams that were very young and were slightly competitive, but they weren't good enough to win last year. And we also had just an a ridiculous amount of injuries last year with the East. Charlotte was injured the whole time. Obviously, Paul George was out. Washington had Melo was out, guys like that. So there's a lot of difference makers that are back. Then there's trades like Nick Batum. He comes over to the East and makes a big impact for Charlotte. Orlando Magic, young guys that didn't know how to win that are starting to figure it out now. So, I mean, years and years of drafting so high eventually had to start to pay dividends, and I think we're starting to see some of that, along with these teams just getting healthier. I mean, I think that makes probably one of the biggest differences.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Pau Gasol last year made the very nice strategic move to go from west to east, and it's done wonders statistically for him. I think other guys are going to follow suit there.
Man, where do you think, as much as I like Pau Gasol, a lot of kind of the writing is on the wall there in Chicago that they are going to let him go and explore other free agents. I know I always picture him in a Spurs uniform, but they don't have the room for that. Where do you think would be a great fit for Pau Gasol outside of that?
Right next to Serge Ibaka. Right next to Serge Ibaka.
They don't have the money.
Well, maybe he'll sign for less. He's been making his De Niro's for a while.
I would like to see him in a Rick Carlisle system. That motion off.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a lot of old. Like I can see that, but I think he would need to go to a team that can kind of protect him a bit. And I think having a guy like Serge Ibaka would be interesting. Like a weird pickup would be the Clippers, right?
Yeah. Having
a guy who can actually come in and hit free throws. I mean, look, a guy like Pau Gasol, like he's going to benefit most teams. I don't think there's a doubt there, but it's one of those things that where does he want to go? Like he can kind of like if he wants tons of money, well, the cap's going up. But if he wants to play for the veterans minimum, he's going to have his choice of a lot of teams.
Oh yeah, I mean, if he's willing to go the David West route, there's basically an unlimited amount of teams that would be vying for his services. I mean, you could see Golden State, Cleveland, all those teams make a push for him. But
the Spurs would be scary, though, with all those guys playing 25 minutes, about 20-25, and you just kind of rotate Duncan, Powell, and Aldridge on very low minutes, high efficiency. They can all pass. Like, okay, I'm slightly for the one time in my life being swayed to your argument, Justin.
And there's always Memphis, right? Going back home, playing with Mark. That would be pretty interesting for a year or two.
That would be really cool.
Oh, if they let Zach go? Okay, I can get that, which is an interesting play. But we're talking about good and bad. I mean, the West, we're talking about how improved the East is. I'm looking at the standings now. We're recording this. The Knicks are 10-10 right now. There are only 4 teams sub 500 in the West. Sorry, in the East. In the West, there are only 6 teams above 500. I mean, this is such a turnaround considering we're used to having 2-3 teams in the West not make the playoffs and could still almost dominate the East. Now, there's obviously been a surge like we've said of those teams in the East. Indiana is out playing very well. Chicago, Cleveland, we knew they'd play well. Miami, I definitely knew they'd play well. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The Raptors, Hawks, Orlando is not that surprising because we said earlier in our previews if they got their stuff together early, there's enough talent, and they're 11-8 right now. Boston, one of the best coaches in the league, playing great defense without a real star. But when we're looking at those problematic situations, I mean, isn't it a bit strange to see the Clippers, who a lot of analysts looked at maybe having the top record in the whole NBA, sitting at 10-9 and not really dealing with that much? I mean, Austin Rivers is playing more minutes than I think anyone would think he'd deserve ever. We have the Jazz at sub 500, the Rockets at 9-11. I mean, the rest kind of goes to shape, but Pelicans at 5-15. This is just kind of a mess. Like, outside of the top guys, do you kind of see like a full role reversal where we're going to see a Western Conference that has like 3, 4, maybe 5 teams that are elite and the rest are just hitting rebuild mode?
I mean, to an extent, yes. I think New Orleans has a unique opportunity to undo a lot of the mistakes that they did in the past. I think they can rebuild properly now, and they've kind of been afforded that opportunity by the injuries they've had. Utah, you mentioned, they've been kind of hit with the injury bug as well. Rudy Gobert's out for a while, undisclosed period of time. They lost Dante Exum before the season. Clippers, I mean, that was an experiment that could go one way or the other. And right now, when I watch the Clippers play, my impression of the team is that they're a bunch of guys that don't like playing with one another, like at all. The bench guys, there was potential for it to work, but it has to cause tension on a team when Austin Rivers is getting more minutes than he deserves because his dad's the coach. Doc the GM is killing Doc the coach by putting these bad players around him. And I just think that it's a team that, while they'll probably put it together, and I kind of feel the same way about Houston, I think they'll both end up in the playoffs, maybe make it a second round. They just have so many issues, and these just such flawed rosters and flawed leadership. I thought the Rockets firing McHale was a mistake. James Harden isn't exactly known for his leadership, nor is Dwight Howard. And the Clippers are just a mess. I mean, they're kind of going the direction the franchise historically has gone, which is even if they're promising, they find a way to muck it up. And right now, that's what they're doing.
Well, they are the Clippers. Mark, you know what? If we're gonna give some credit, I think some long-deserved credit is due for yourself. If anyone remembers, a couple of years ago, we were on NBA TV, and Mark boldly predicted that Russell Westbrook was the best player on the OKC Thunder. And now, years later, you're starting to get some bandwagoners. As good as Kevin Durant is, Westbrook seems to be just that much better. What's your view on the new dynamic and OKC in general? Because we look at the top guys. We see Golden State, where when we're recording, they're 20-0. Obviously, the class of the whole NBA. San Antonio Spurs 16-4. We're not worried about them. Maybe some injuries here and there. The rest is kind of predictable. Some other teams will get better, but the Thunder at 11-8. I think they're either they look primed to just kind of explode. And where do you see this team? Because there's always the same questions, right? Who's leading this team? Who's their best player? Does it actually matter? Kevin Durant's pending in free agency. Where does this whole situation stick with you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and what I said 2 years ago was that it was Westbrook's team. I think Durant may be the best talented player on the hardwood for those guys, but Westbrook is the one who runs the show. And the way I came to that conclusion, and I still see it today, is the dynamic between them. Whenever Durant is out for a while, because this tends to be a trend in his career these days, Westbrook will play at a completely different level. And then when Durant comes back, there's a lot of issues at home. They don't really know how to run the household. Durant's not getting the ball a lot late in games. Distribution tends to be an issue for Westbrook, and it's just this push and pull between who's the alpha dog and the beta dog, and it's just it's not going away. it's not going anywhere, and these two have not been able to sort it out. And then the screaming elephant in the room now is that free agency is coming, and people are slowly starting to talk about it. They're going to trade Durant by the All-Star game, something I would not do at all. But I mean, these issues are just coming to a head right now, and the guys they picked up over the summer, it's not gelling quickly as they had surmised. So a lot of question marks in OKC, and so they go from being a top tier team to a team with a lot more question marks right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think I agree on a certain level, but I think I don't on another. When we're looking at the statistics, and Justin's pointed this out quite a few times, Russell Westbrook, everyone talks about his scoring. He can be a ball hog. He's averaging 9.6 assists this year. Let's not pretend that is not an elite number for a point guard. He's averaging 27 points. He's actually averaging slightly less than Kevin Durant. My synthesis of this, and Justin, I'm going to let you chime in because I know you've spent the last few months hating on Enes Kanter, so you'd rather talk about someone else. But is it possible that Kevin Durant, as I hoped, has accepted a secondary role to Westbrook, and it's going to work?
I can't disagree with you guys more about Westbrook being the best player on OKC. I mean, you're talking about his assist numbers and things like that. At the same time, you're talking about a player that's averaging 5.4 turnovers a game.
Well, he does play at a breakneck speed, right? This is his style. It's always been.
Well, that's great, but he's a player that's playing at a breakneck speed. He's for the 9.6 assists he gets 5.4 turnovers. So that's not great. He's not an elite finisher at the rim or even a very strong finisher at the rim. He's shooting 29.9% from three, which is the same mark as last year. That's well below average. 46% from the field. I mean, that's good, but that's not what you want from somebody with his athleticism. He should be finishing a lot more, especially around the rim. Right now, he's getting the ball more, and he's playing in, I guess you could call, a number one option role, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's better. And Durant's numbers are better on less touches. Him not taking care of the ball to me is a big problem. For his athleticism, he doesn't play good defense. Durant does. Durant is clearly, and as good as Westbrook is, and he's one of my favorite players to watch in the league, Durant is in a tier above. There's the LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant tier that Anthony Davis is starting to poke his head into, but they're in a level above. And who knows, maybe John Wall playing so poorly this season is a recruiting pitch to be like, hey, nobody will ever think that I'm better than you, and that's supposed to appeal to Durant maybe. But I think it can work. But my thing, as always, has been the issue with the Thunder is about the role players more than the relationship between Westbrook and Durant. I think Westbrook, for all his inefficiencies, does draw a lot of attention and allows Durant to operate in a really efficient role. That's fine. But even if you added, let's say, an Iman Shumpert to this team, a competent shooting guard that at least can occasionally hit threes and play good defense, or a center with the mobility, like Steven Adams, in my mind, he's kind of the one guy that I say, okay, that makes some sense, although he hasn't shown the consistency, but they need better role players if they're going to contend with teams like Golden State, because you can't have a team with three options that you can bank on, and two at a really high level, and very questionable role players and expect to beat Golden State. It's just not possible. When Golden State goes to their death lineup with Draymond Green at center, you can't put one of your highest paid players in Enes Kanter on the floor. Him and Steven Adams have zero chance at defending that small ball lineup. And if you're going to try to feed Kanter, Golden State's going to live with that because you're not running the offense through Durant or Westbrook. So I think it's a very flawed roster. And for those reasons, beyond Durant and Westbrook, I think that's why they come up short. I don't think it's going to be the relationship between Westbrook and Durant, which is flawed, but still very successful.
So possibly in a different way, this kind of emulates the Clippers situation where it's a culmination of the pieces more than the overall talent kind of thing, right? It's like it's how these guys fit together. But you know what? It seems like it's a bit too much talent not to win. Now, if you had to play doctor and go in there, and let's say you got to play GM for a day, where would you start? Like, if you were just given the reins saying, you know what, we give you full trust, you can trade Durant, you can trade Westbrook, you can do whatever, where would you begin to kind of help this team out?
My God, that's such a tough question because really, there's no way in hell you trade any of their core three of Westbrook, Durant, and Ibaka. Dion Waiters is in the final year of his contract.
You sign him back?
I don't know.
No.
It would depend. It would depend what the dollar value is. I mean, if it's like 3 years, 21. If it's 3 years, 21 million, I'm okay with it. If you're starting to get into Terrence Ross money, God no. I don't know how much trade value he really has. Enes Kanter, I'm not a believer in him. You obviously can't trade him with his contract. So their options are really limited. I'd really try to pursue some sort of shooting guard that can space the floor occasionally and play defense. Obviously, they missed Thabo Sefolosha being there. Roberson's very good defensively, but he's a sub-Tony Allen shooter, so he's really not a threat when he's out there. They just need to get more. They need to get multidimensional. You can't have all these one-dimensional players. Dion might be a nice X factor, but they can't rely on him. I really don't know how you fix this situation. I think you just kind of have to look what's out there. If there's an upgrade available, you take it. If not, you just bank on having 2 top 5 talents on your team and hope that's enough to overcome the kind of cream of the crop in the West.
That's a scary thought, and because there seems to be a lot of talent, and I think the overall answer, if we were mad scientists and true mad scientists, would be some combination machine where Ibaka and Kanter would become one person, and you'd have Anthony Morrow and Andre Robertson become one person, and then they'd be fine. But Mark, you've gone out on the limb before with stuff. Same question: would you dare trade Westbrook or Durant this year?
No, but I remember back in the day, I think it was '86. Red Auerbach basically begged, borrowed, and stealed to get the number 2 pick in the draft, where he ended up getting Lenny Bias. And they had a mega team that year before getting Lenny and then the tragedy. But I mean, if there's any way possible, if they got someone like Jamal Murray, a combo 2 guard in the draft, that would be something excellent. So they have a lot of
still take a while to develop. I mean, he's not going to
immediately. I think he's a guy who, within his first or 2 year, really gets a good feel for the league. But I mean, guards
can come in and make an impact right away. Look at Damian Lillard, look at Kyrie Irving, look at guys like that. I mean, even John Wall, like those guys.
You think his game fits with those guys though? Like you wouldn't want someone a little bit more defensive centric?
I think he's pretty good defensively. I mean, he's going to not be a good defender in the NBA. I don't think it's realistically possible for them to trade up. I don't think they have the assets to get that high in the draft. But if we're speaking theoretically, he does bring a lot of things that would make them a much better team.
For sure. And, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on in the NBA these days. Justin, maybe we'll kick it back to you. What stood out, maybe made you kind of scratch your head or impressed, or maybe it's just Kevin Love's headband, how he's rocking it. But is there anything real that stood out there this week?
Can I read a quote? This will probably lead into what Justin's going to say here. This is a quote from LeBron. Jesus Christ, only one who returns when everything's all right.
Yeah, that was him talking about Kyrie Irving. They were asked if there was a sense that the team was kind of just waiting for Kyrie. I have a really tough time taking kind of the drama and the worry that's around the Cavs seriously, especially when they started last season 19 and 20. They have Kyrie Irving and Iman Shumpert coming back. And even now, with all the flaws in their roster, with all the injuries, they're at a 56 win pace.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good team on its own. What I sense with Cleveland is a bit of a disconnect between the sense of urgency LeBron has and the sense of urgency that the role players have. You still have a lot of guys that haven't been in a winning environment for a long time, and I think there's a sense, at least with the bench guys, that they can turn it on whenever they want, and LeBron wants that excellence from moment one. He wants that MVP this year. So I think that's more what's going on than anything. Obviously, I'm sure you guys kind of saw the news, but Kyrie Irving has been cleared for 5-on-5 practice. Mm-hmm. The ESPN report had been after a week with no setbacks in 5-on-5, he would be able to return to games. So obviously they're looking forward to having both him and Iman Shumpert back. But right now the best team in the NBA is Golden State. There's just no denying that. They're the defending champs. They haven't lost a game. They're the best offensive and defensive team in the NBA. So I can see why there's a kind of a sense of urgency and some concern out of the Cavs, because there's a pretty high standard of excellence that's being set right now by the Warriors.
Yeah, well, Mark, speaking of those Warriors, we talk everything they do right, and obviously Justin, chime in here as much as you want, but what's their Achilles heel? Like if you had to build a team to beat the Warriors, because I think at this point, that's the conversation you're having, right? Because they're obviously doing so well on so many levels that if you had to construct a team theoretically, what would that team look like to beat Golden State?
Well, they got a taste of it the other night, Utah, when Gobert was there with Favors. Those big lineups, it is the antithesis of what they do, and this is what Popovich has been building. In the treasure trunk this summer for San Antonio. Going big is going to be, I think, that punch that may possibly work against it. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. Memphis did something similar to them last year in the playoffs. So that's what I would do. I would go big or go home, because you're not going to run with these guys. You are not going to run with these guys. I'm going to throw a little bit of trivia at you two. Who is right now leading the league in three-point field goal percentage? What player?
Kawhi Leonard.
It is, and he's shooting 4 a game. So making 4 a game, I think. So
he has the best 3-point percentage out of players that shoot more than 4 attempts a game.
So he's a fantastic 3-point shooter, fantastic defensive player, and he's coachable. It's weird. Yeah. It's like these 3-and-D guys matter.
He's more than that. He's the top 5 player in the NBA right now.
He's getting there, man. It's beautiful.
And who's he kicked out? Like who is that top 5? Because you know what? I've heard that exact conversation, and I'm like, who drops out of there?
Do you want to know who the top 5 is?
I do.
I'll give it to you right now. You got, in no particular order, you have LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Blake Griffin, James Harden. There are 8 top 5 players. I hate the arbitrary drawing of a line at 5. Sometimes there's 2 top 5 players that are legitimate stars in the NBA. Sometimes there's more than that. The arbitrary lines, there's 8 top 5 talents in the NBA right now, and those are my 5 when I'm looking at it. Oh, sorry, and Anthony Davis. That's the one.
It's like you mentioned Anthony. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I had number 8. But I listed 7. Anthony Davis is the other one. There's 8 top 5 guys, and you cannot move me off that position.
Well, I apologize if you failed grade 1 math, but I think if we were talking superstars, I would agree with you. But when you say a number, you got to pick a number. I mean, as unfair as it is, although I really like that Paul George, and deservingly so, is in this conversation. I've been singing his praises for a long, long time. But can we turn this into maybe what it actually is in the synthesis, what a true superstar is? Like, can we stop calling players who are stars superstars? And thank you so much for not having Carmelo Anthony on that list.
Well, he's not there anymore. It's hard to define what a superstar is. A superstar is someone who your grandma knows about. I mean, what defines that? Is it someone that transcends sports? Because if it's that, it's LeBron and Steph.
Mm-hmm. And even Kobe Bryant still. I mean, if you're going by that definition, it's still Kobe Bryant because he's got the name recognition. To me, a superstar is someone that will excel regardless of situation. you can put them on any team and they're going to produce at a very, very high level. That's why I wouldn't put a guy like Draymond Green up in that category, not a LaMarcus Aldridge, guys like that. I mean, there's guys that are stars, but when it's superstars, these are guys that a lot of teams would trade their entire rosters just to get because they're so hard to acquire. So a guy that can dominate regardless of situation, transformational talent, that you build your roster around them rather than the other way around.
No, that does make sense, I suppose, and I suppose it's the age-old question. And there's so many players who are jumping into that category. Now, I am happy you brought up Kobe though, because to finalize this, there's something that I wanted to say for a while. Is it possible that Kobe Bryant is trying to guarantee them the #1 pick in the draft?
No.
Oh, okay, come on now. This is a man who does not pass the rock. That would be passing the rock, Phil. He's not passing.
Not the way he's shooting it. He's doing a great job at getting them that #1 pick.
I'm saying no.
Everything about Kobe Bryant is a maniacal obsession with winning.
He would be passing to players who are far more efficient on his team than doing that then.
I'm not saying he has the greatest understanding of what he needs to do to win on this team, but he is never going to tank.
It's not in his DNA.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not on purpose, but I kind of think like when you look at this, and Byron Scott was quoted saying he'll never bench Kobe Bryant. There, almost every single other player, if they were playing how Kobe Bryant's playing right now, would not be allowed to do what he's doing right now. And yes, they have young players, and yes, they're developing, blah, blah, blah. But part of me is saying, you know what, they've decided we have a really young team. We're going to let our Clarksons, our Russells, our Randalls, who's playing really well, by the way, Julius Randle, kind of play it out. We'll let Kobe be Superman, get a million shots. The fans get everything they want to see. Well, I mean, they get to see Kobe. They don't get everything they want to see because they don't see good Kobe. And we pull Ben Simmons, he plays the 3, and we're back in contention for the next 10 years.
I mean, I don't think it's a conscious decision.
Maybe not by Kobe, but maybe by the GM group who has realized we were never in it. Like, we just landed into these young players. We didn't have solutions for the futures before. We finally do. Maybe this is the best of both worlds by appeasing Kobe, the fans, and getting the best pick because we know how inefficient he is right now.
Yeah, you're giving them too much credit. It's that simple. You're giving them way too much credit.
Maybe.
That's like
it's the only thing that makes sense to me. Why do you let him do this?
That's like saying Cleveland intentionally botched drafting Anthony Bennett so that they could get Andrew Wiggins the following year and trade him for Kevin Love to bring in LeBron.
No, but that's year after year. This one makes more sense. I get what you're saying, and
look at the year after year failures of the Lakers organization. Look at Kobe shooting them out of games last year when they were talking playoffs the whole time for reasons that I can't understand. This is a continuation of a pattern with the Lakers.
Yeah, Jerry West is not with that squad anymore, guys. They're not that smart.
All right, well, I guess then the only true answer and my final word on this subject is that as much as I'd like to be atheist, I have to say I cannot be, because the basketball gods are real. They have real effect. They influence our game in heavy ways, and we're seeing it now in true form.
Yeah. Hey, Sheed with the 2-hand shot. I don't know how he does this. Justin, how does he do this?
Because he's Sheed.
Okay.
There's no other explanation. I saw that trick shot. I remember they had that back in the day on the website Need for Sheed.
Okay.
And, he would do that in Pistons practice. I love
Rasheed Wallace. Always one of my favorite players.
Oh yeah, he's in my top 5 favorites for sure. And that's an actual defined top 5 rather than
6, 7, 8.
Yeah, numbers. Rather than a platoon of players.
It's a good one. Well, guys, this is looking like it's the end of another great week. A lot of information, a lot of stuff happening. Thanks for tuning in to this week's show. We're going to bring a ton of more information. Look for some featured articles, videos, and more coming up on hoopslounge.com. We'll have the contacts of all these of all ourselves in the description of this video and audio podcast if you want to talk to us on Twitter, any of the social media. Very responsive and love to keep the conversation going. So do either of you guys have a couple last words, things people should look out for this week?
Yeah, just quickly, Dikembe said that when asked about Montreal having an NBA team, he said, "Why not?" And he loves the flavor the kids in our city have for NBA. So yeah, good for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure Justin's happy to see Mo Williams not playing the huge minutes he once was, and Delhi's back in town.
Yeah. I mean, Matthew Dellavedova. I posted this on Twitter yesterday, but I think people are remembering what he was last season, which was kind of a cute story without a lot of substance, rather than what he's doing this year. Right now, he's leading the NBA in assist-to-turnover ratio. He's averaging 4.3 assists for every turnover he has, which is
just trade him for. They should just trade him for Russell Westbrook. It makes so much sense.
And he's also shooting 42% from three while playing 27 minutes a night. Those are legitimate role player numbers. It's not just a cute story. He's transformed himself into a legitimate role player. He's transformed me from a hater into someone that is a believer in his game now. It's very impressive the work he's put in his game.
Exactly. Well, Delhi time. Never going to forget it. It's kind of like Linsanity, but it actually repeated itself. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining and thanks for taking part. Like I said, hit us up on social media, and we'll catch you guys next time in the lounge.